We talked about how sheriffs like to use prisoner food funds to make a little extra cash, and generally speaking, one of the biggest sources of corrupt money comes from exploiting the people they have in custody. The telephone system in jails, for example, comes up all the time when you're exploring corruption on the sheriff's level. Since a lot of sheriff's offices keep a portion of the money collected by private companies when inmates make phone calls, they're incentivized to choose services that provide them with the highest fees rather than those providing inmates and their families with good deals. In 2011, Bristol County Sheriff Tom Hodgson's office entered a deal with the private telephone firm Securus, which agreed to pay him 48% of the gross revenues from all calls made within his jails, plus annual payments of over $200,000. His office banked more than $1 million from inmate phone calls between August 2011 and June 2013. But hey, listen, come on, folks, don't worry. He totally got away with it. As the Chief Justice overseeing the case notes, had the legislature intended to put an end to the sheriff's practice of collecting inmate telephone revenues, it could have done so. Meaning that this action of squeezing prisoners for phone calls is allowed because no one has made a law stopping it. Good point, law person. That is technically legal to do. Seems like we should change that. And this is another big factor in why sheriffs are extreme hotspots for corruption, which is that they can be easily purchased by outside influences. A 2021 study from Common Cause found that businesses with an interest in expanding local prison systems can spend relatively little money to establish positive relationships with sheriff's offices, which are then incentivized to jail more people and look the other way when inmates are harmed or abused. This is unlike regular cops, who, while still absolutely can get money from corporations, have to do it through shady foundations. But with sheriffs, not only do they have no oversight, but since they have to campaign for the job, they also get political donations. And so when a prison reform coalition looked into donations from a sample of sheriffs from 11 different states, they found that 40% of those contributions came from companies that present a clear conflict of interest, such as construction companies that build jails, telephone companies that provide service in those jails, or legal firms that specifically represent sheriff's offices undergoing misconduct accusations. And boy, that is shady. That is shadier than a willow tree selling drugs to teens. That is shadier than an umbrella huffing paint at work. That is shadier than... And then, of course, there is healthcare in the jails, which sheriffs have slowly been turning over to private companies who are primarily concerned with their bottom line. This decision, the cost of taxpayers, is absolutely killing inmates. According to that Reuters investigation, jails with private healthcare companies had death rates 18% to 58% higher than jails with publicly managed healthcare. The reason is very clear in any of the countless horror stories about a prisoner dying due to medical neglect, which is that contracts made between these jails and companies set very specific limits to things like off-site care and staffing, creating a situation where hospital visits, even in extreme emergencies, get denied. These are terrible, evil deals made between sheriff's offices in charge of these jails and the companies sending them cop tons of cash. Sometimes illegally, like when last year a sheriff was caught accepting bribes, dinners, vacations, and a, I do not shit you, Richard Petty NASCAR driving experience in exchange for a prison contract with Correct Care Solutions. That correct care being defined as 140 lawsuits and a handful of prisoner deaths. Wowee, geez, can't imagine why people don't like police in this country or private health care. I am stumped. Tree jokes for some reason today. I could do a whole video on prison healthcare, but we have to keep moving. We haven't even talked about how multiple fossil fuel companies have paid sheriff's offices millions to crack down on pipeline protests. In North Bend, Oregon, the Pembina Pipeline Corp spent at least $2 million to create a corporately funded wing of the Coos County Sheriff's Office, devoted to investigating protests against a potential pipeline project in the area, including paying for riot gear. This isn't a secret, but a completely open relationship that they have. Meanwhile, in Minnesota, the exact same deal has been created between the pipeline company Enbridge Inc. and the local sheriff, once again paying for riot gear and training in order to crack down on any protests, which, if you're not following along, is a thing protected by the First Amendment. Protesting is kind of a thing we're traditionally allowed to do, but I guess So too allowed are major companies paying cops to whack environmentalists with batons, as this proud tradition dates back to at least the 90s, when Weyerhaeuser Timber tried to put an Oregon sheriff's office on the payroll for protecting their logging operations. For you new kids, logging was like the cool 90s version of pipelines when America didn't know and or care about the full extent of our climate hell. Hey, thanks for watching that clip. Here's the evergreen end plate to ask you to like and subscribe. It's any day of the year where you are.